Hello, I'm Brandon, and I'm going to talk about CLS, or Combat Lifesaver. I am not an instructor for the CLS course, and in no way am condoning or certifying any individual to perform any tasks or processes that I will be explaining throughout my speech. I am only informing an audience upon a course I have taken for preparation to deploy. That being said, I'm going to discuss the two types of combat lifesaving, or CLS, how they differ, and how they are important to everyday and not so everyday applications. CLS is a course taught by the military for combat situations in A. Care under fire, and B. Conventional self-aid and buddy care applications. When a deployed location and a casualty withstands an injury on the battlefield and under fire, care under fire applications will be used. While home station or in garrison, conventional self-aid and buddy care applications or conventional methods will be used. First, let's go into some basics of the care under fire. Care under fire is when you sustain an injury or a casualty while still under fire. When you sustain an IED attack or somebody gets shot and you don't have fire superiority, that would be care under fire. Care under fire is unique in that you are trying to get the casualty to a safe spot as soon as possible, whatever that means may be. Whether you have to load the casualty up on a litter or just grab them by the collar and start dragging them, you have to get that patient to a secure spot to be able to start effectively working on them. Conventional self-aid and buddy care, however, is a bit different. You will utilize anything from self-aid kits to whatever you have lying around to be able to get that person safe or control bleeding or whatever you have to do to be able to stabilize that patient until paramedics or professionals can arrive. Since CLS care under fire is used for combat situations, let's go into some of the more radical applications that are taught throughout the course. CLS, when I went through training, the training was very, very rigorous. You loaded casualties onto 2.5 tons, which is about 5 feet high, to simulate a helicopter. You are the security for that patient, unless you are the medic, for the patient to be able to load it on that helicopter. And you have to load the patient a certain way. I'm not going to get into that because it's a very complicated process, but you have to make sure that the patient is stabilized first and foremost, and then you provide security for that patient for the medic. Some processes to be used for care under fire would be drags, the combat application tourniquet, combat gauze, and the quick clot. The drags are the most important, as when you're sustaining fire and you cannot gain fire superiority, you have to drag the patient to safety. Some of the most simplest drags is what you'll probably have to do. You'll grab them by the collar or the handle on the vest, and you'll just drag them to a safe and secure locations to where you cannot sustain fire. Behind a wheel, behind a vehicle, behind anything you can find to where you will not get shot while you're working on your patient. Some of the items used while in a care under fire situation will be the combat application tourniquet. Basically all it is a little winding wheel, and you can use anything from a belt, anything above 2 inches wide so it doesn't cut into the skin but still cuts off the circulation to the wound. And we only use this when somebody like blows off an arm or a leg and you can't actually control the bleeding, or they sustain a serious arterial wound and you can't control the bleeding with combat gauze. Combat gauze is unique in that it replaces the quick clot, which cauterized the wound. Combat gauze clots the wound through a chemical agent found in shellfish. Since we've covered some of the basics of care under fire, I'm going to introduce some of the more conventional methods taught while in CLS training. Conventional methods are not any different from first aid or CPR training. Basically what it is, you will find anything you have to do to be able to sustain the patient or stabilize the patient while sustaining the wound and not furthering injuring your patient, which goes to say. So you can use anything for first aid kits. The biggest thing we use in the military is litters. Basically what it is 2 poles with netting in between and 2 straps to hold the patient down. But you can use anything from broomsticks with your ABU tops or anything that you can find to carry that patient to safety or get him to an ambulance. And this will cover anything ranging from broken arms to heat stroke. You'll use anything basically that you can find around you to stabilize a wound and make the patient more comfortable. Now that we know the basic two types of healing CLS, we can go into the differences between them. The differences between the two types of healing in CLS is, quite obvious. The care under fire is only when you're sustaining more injuries than you can heal. If you have an enemy firing at you, that's care under fire. If an IED goes off, that's care under fire while you're in the vehicle. You want to get to safety and be able to stabilize the patient as soon as possible. Conventional methods are a bit less. You just call for 911 or the professionals, and you basically stabilize the patient until they show up and get them hooked up. CLS is a much needed skill, whether you're deployed or home station. The need to be able to treat all types of wounds in any given situation is definitely detrimental to the lives of those around you. The more people that know the basics of healing, of treating of injuries, is the better chance that we'll all have skills to help each other survive longer. Although combat training may not be necessary to most personnel, it never hurts to get the experience of being in a situation of that type to help prepare us for what may be to come. And I say this because when I went through training, it was aimed at real-life situations rather than ones that might pop up, or real-life situations that will happen. Yeah, I think it's always a good opportunity to be able to learn especially about healing, even if you don't ever come into contact with a situation, because it never hurts to save somebody's life.